Welcome to Baseball and Coffee, episode 34. It's Friday, July 8th, and we have a guest host today, Doug Jastrow, who I've been playing fantasy baseball with for a good 7-8 years now? I think 8 years.
Long time.
2014. So welcome, Doug.
Hey, how's it going?
You want to share a little bit of so we'll skip around a little bit. Your intro into fantasy baseball and baseball fandom real quick?
Totally. Yeah, no, that's good. That's a interesting question. I was, I always look back at baseball. For me, I kind of got into it a little bit late. I think I got into baseball. I knew about baseball. I watched baseball until I was probably 11, 12 before I got into baseball. That was 1985. And the weird thing was about that is that I wasn't really into baseball. I was into baseball cards. I like baseball cards and got into those. And then watched like the playoffs in '85, Dodgers and Cardinals. I remember that, and it was a sad result for a Dodger fan. But yeah, and then I really got into it. '88 season, obviously magical from start to finish. Really, if you go back at 1988, I mean. Maybe I'll do that at some point in my life, is watch the entire 1988 season for the Dodgers. I thought it was great. Anyway, I love baseball cards, love baseball. And when I started getting into fantasy baseball, I didn't quite realize what it was, but it was really just baseball cards. So I loved it from the beginning, with when I collected baseball cards, like when my players that I was collecting, I collected Roger Clemens, Oral Hershiser, Steve Sachs. Steve Sachs was my guy on the Dodgers. And when they would do well, I would get the Beckett Monthly, the price guide, and see if the prices went up, And so it was kind of like a long form fantasy baseball league, where like now it's like, Mookie Betts can hit 2 home runs last night. Sorry about that, Tino. And, his price goes up instantly. So anyway, I got into fantasy baseball about 05, and I've been digging it ever since. It really scratches an itch that I had from my baseball card days.
Awesome. That's pretty much my entry point to baseball was '86, and I guess the first real memory I have was watching the Mets Red Sox World Series, right? And the famous Buckner error, and then I remember collecting cards from '86 on. And but the fun part about that was I brought this up a number of times. The McGuire Olympic card was like the holy grail for me at that time, and I wasn't even really a McGuire fan. That was just the card that everybody wanted. And then it was Eric Davis, and then kind of morphed into Ken Griffey Jr. and then on and on. During the break, I'll pull one of the Beckett's. I actually have an old Beckett, or a couple of old Beckett's in my bookcase next to me here. I'll pull them.
Nice.
But yeah, I remember
that
was a huge deal to go get the new Beckett and see if your cards went up, and super fun.
Totally.
Super
and
fun.
that I got you brought up the McGuire Olympic card, that 85 Topps set. That was it, man. That was a beautiful set. Those Olympic cards, I thought it had a clean design, right? It was just kind of a big portrait with the kind of the classic kind of team name at the bottom. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on, even though Donruss 85 Donruss was a little bit busier. I loved 85 Donruss, so it's not like I'm a zealot for like the simplicity of cards, but 85, man, across the board, Fleer, Donruss, Topps, it was a beautiful year.
I think from a design standpoint, the 87 Fleer with the really light blue borders, that was one of my favorites. And then 88, 87 to 88 Donruss I loved as well. I always think about the Bo Jackson rated rookie in the baby blue Royals jersey, and then the Benito Santiago rated rookie was another one of my favorites.
For sure.
Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah, I'm drinking coffee right now, actually.
What do you have an involved process? Are you a gas station guy? What's your typical coffee regimen?
Let's see. No, pretty straightforward. No drama on the coffee. I'm the only one that drinks coffee in the house.
Uh-huh.
So I just need to make a cup, really. And so I have an AeroPress.
Sure, AeroPress is great.
Yeah, dig that, because it's just like this is actually my second cup because of this podcast. But
Nice.
usually it's just the one cup and AeroPress. I get beans delivered from a local roaster around here, Temple Coffee. It's in Sacramento. Super good. And just make up a cup. Like probably 11 to 1 water on that, and I'm good to go. I usually have it with a little toast, and I'm ready.
That's a pretty thick cup of coffee, 11 to 1.
Oh yeah.
Right on. Good stuff. I'm in the same boat. I make a pot of, I do have pour over and AeroPress and all that kind of stuff and a nice grinder, but typically for me, it's, as I've shared before, it's just a nice brewed pot of coffee, and we have a local roaster here in Walla Walla that does a really great job. Really lucky to have them. So I actually have a really beautiful cup of Guatemala that I just made. And I was just thinking, before the pod, I was sitting out on the deck and kind of taking in the sun coming up, and I was just thinking to myself how privileged I am to be able to have a really, this coffee was roasted 6 days ago, which is right kind of in the sweet spot, and I have the equipment to make a really nice cup of coffee, and I was able to sit outside and just take in the sun coming up. I'm like, this is for a pretty privileged place to be, top of the food chain kind of thing. But it was a nice moment for me.
Yeah. And even though 2022 has its drawbacks, to be sure, and not to undercut those, but like you think about it, like coffee in 2022, you got like 6-day-old roasted beans, you got gourmet techniques on that. Right. I think about beer as well. Like you used to get like Miller Genuine Draft was like as good as it could get at a certain point. And now you can just get like local hazy IPAs and and then what we were talking about before with we were living in the Stone Age, waiting for that Beckett Monthly to come out to see what our baseball cards were worth. And now, like I said, fantasy baseball being the equivalent of a kid collecting baseball cards, you get the instant response. So definite privilege to be living in these times right now.
Yeah, we're in a good place, in some ways in a good place, or maybe it's us. For me, I'll speak for myself, realizing some of the things that we have given all the other stuff that's going on. I think for me, that's a little bit more of where I'm coming from is we'll stop and enjoy the moment and enjoy the local, so to speak.
Totally. Right. I get it.
So we're going to cover today, we're going to talk trade, kind of expand upon some of the things that we talked about in the last pod with Matt and Aaron, because we all have different approaches. And I think that it's really, to me, really fascinating to listen to just how much thought and energy each manager gives to their trade approach, right? Because it's not just transactional. It's, how do you approach the other manager? Do you change your approach based on the manager you're talking to? How do you evaluate what the other team might want or need prior to conversation? I think there's just so much that goes into the mechanics of completing a trade that aren't always discussed. And so it's something that we wanted to talk about today. So I guess just to get started, let me rewind a little bit. I'd love to know what statistics for you are most important, or what is it that you're looking for as you get started evaluating who you might want to trade for, both hitter and pitcher.
Yeah. So it's kind of speaking in general, we can, specifically on trades for sure, acquiring new players, but like in general, I had this moment after being in fantasy baseball like 3 or 4 years, and I was I wasn't doing too well. I wasn't making the playoffs, and a couple of players or managers said that they were during the off season, no less. It was like a month after the season ended, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go to this bar and talk baseball." And one of the guys, actually, he's in our league right now, Jake, Beer's Good Food. he was there. And I think that was either he had won that championship that year, or it was he won back to back, and that was the second year that he won. Anyway, I was trying to get his perspective on things, and he said, I just remember, I'm sure he said a lot of things, but the one thing that I remember, he said, he goes, "You get pitchers that strike people out and get hitters that hit home runs," and I was just like, well, what else? And he's like, that's pretty much it,
right?
And even though there obviously is more on that, that's kind of, I've been trying to take that philosophy. It's a good philosophy, it works on that. Obviously, you need a few other elements to win, but that's kind of what I've been after for the most part. That's the ideal is just that pitchers that strike people out and hitters that hit home runs.
Right.
So everything else kind of falls into place from there.
Are you so obviously with the pod, I think Aaron and I tend to go way down the rabbit hole of whatever statistic we can get our hands on. How deep do you go down that hole in your own research? And I guess sometimes I think how much is too much, right? Is it paralysis by analysis?
Right.
You get too caught up in kind of the minutia of it and not really see the big picture of the team, right? I think for me, at least, I can focus so much on a couple of stats within a couple of players that I'm not seeing the team construction as a whole. And so I end up having deficits in certain categories because of it. What I'll say for me is for pitchers, strikeout percentage minus walk percentage is pretty much the go-to. And the gold standard for me is like 20% or higher. Having a K minus BB of 20% or higher is a really good place to sit. And then obviously evaluating all of the other stuff, but that's kind of my baseline. And then with hitters, for me, it's the same as what you said, basically. It's OPS, right? OPS is the stat that is most important to me. And so carrying players that might give me one category, but like say Jorge Mateo as an example, right? Who can get you a whole bunch of steals, but is going to be a sub 700 OPS, is the type of player that I try to avoid or that I haven't been able to win with. Yeah. So having a baseline OPS, and then, with hitters as well, I think that building a team where you don't have multiple players who don't steal bases, meaning having 10 steals here and 10 steals there and 20 steals here, is the way that I would prefer to construct a team, because it allows me to have kind of a baseline of production at each category across the board. Yeah, no, I see that. But, it's funny because, like, speaking specifically of your team right now in our league, sure, you got Buxton. Buxton's your guy, right? You've had him, I think, since he was 16. Yeah, and pretty much. And I like that type of player, because he's going to give you, obviously you're going to get the power there, you're going to get the speed, but also it's speed from an outfield spot, which is beautiful, because you were talking about Mateo. Mateo's going to get you stolen bases, and he's also going to kill you on the airs from the infield, right? So, yeah. So I like the construction that you got going on right now with on the hitter side and the pitching side. Don't get me wrong, but on the hitter side, where you have that speed spread out, but speed in the right places, because speed from a shortstop or is good, but it's gonna hurt as well, because we still have that dumb air category in our league. Right. I like so let's break off like tangentially a little bit real quick. So in our league, we have errors as one of the hitters categories, and I actually really like having that sort of wild card category, which really the only way in which you can control it, in that you don't pick up a player consciously who makes a ton of errors. There's that portion of control, but there's also, I think, the strategy of owning a player who has middle infield eligibility, but is a DH or a corner infielder or an outfielder, because their likelihood of making errors is much, much lower than someone who regularly plays in the middle infield. And I think there's an element of strategy, or who do you choose to DH? If you have two shortstops who are great hitters and one of them is your utility player, then yes, you might be getting production from that second shortstop by putting him in the utility spot, but you're also increasing the number of errors or likelihood of errors on your team. And so I really like that element of strategy. I don't think it's something that we talk about very often in our league, or even, I don't know how many players actually look at the number of errors that the player has committed before evaluating whether that player is an asset or not, right?
Totally. No, I hate the error category, but I also love it. I've never actually played without it. Every league that I've been in, I think, has had the error, and you can't. I don't think that you could play without it, or at least you're gonna lose, like you said, a lot of kind of the strategy that goes involved with roster construction on that by not having the error. So I love it. I love having shortstop eligibility where they're not playing shortstop. I got Suarez, Eugenio Suarez on your team, the Mariners, and he's got shortstop eligibility from last year. He earned it last year by making like a ton of errors, but now he's got it this year, and so that's a nice thing. So there's a little added bonus for him that he's not going to make those shortstop errors anymore over at third base. And I love it. But it's also when your player makes an error, you're just like, oh my God, I just lost a category off something that just kind of like happens in the ninth inning of a game that doesn't mean anything. You're just like, oh man, how did that happen? So no, I dig it. I dig the errors. Yeah.
I cut Colton Wong a couple days ago and picked up Jace Peterson, and I was deciding whether to kind of between the two. And one of the major factors was the fact that in limited time this year, Wong has committed 8 errors, right? And so while I know he's going to be a 12-12 or 15-15 type second baseman, and I already have Andres Jimenez, I thought, for me, those errors can potentially kill me. And if I'm not careful, I'm canceling out some of the production in the other categories, by having a player that is so error prone this particular year. So it's interesting that I know certainly in my other conversations, errors, when evaluating a player's value, errors don't ever come up, but it is something that I think we have to consider.
Yeah, no, I remember that, was it Marcus Seaman? I forget, how do you pronounce his last name? Simeon. He when he was on the A's, he made so many errors that you couldn't even have him on your team. Even though he was hitting home runs and stealing bases, he was incredible on the errors, and I was just like, I didn't want to touch him. He still kind of has that stigma for me, where I'm just kind of like, ooh, I don't want that guy. I don't know how many errors he has this year, but
he's become a much better fielder. I know he worked a lot with Ron Washington when he was on the A's to become a better middle infielder, because he was a horrible infielder for quite a while, as you said. But yeah, it's a factor that we don't talk about often, but certainly I think we should consider more as individual managers. So let me ask you this: when you're looking at your team and you decide, okay, I want to trade for a specific player, right? Or I have this gap and I'm looking for a player. Does your approach, or one, from a communication method standpoint, how do you communicate with that manager that you're looking to trade with? And two, does your approach change from manager to manager based on, what you think, how you think that manager communicates or is willing to listen?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would, on the second part, for sure, it's dependent on who owns the player at the time. If I'm looking for a specific player, I'll obviously you look that up, you see who it is, and I would say in general, right, you would want to specify your approach, just like in life, right? If you want to ask someone out on a date, right, and depending on what you knew of that person, you would change your approach based on information in order to maximize your success on that. And but but I'll tell you this. I mean, speaking real in our league, there's certain players now that, or managers, I should say, that when I look up and I go, oh, I want this guy, and then I'll look up see who it is, I'll go, oh, forget it. Right. And so for an example on that, I think it was last year or a couple of years ago, really wanted, I hope I'm getting the name right, Polanco, Jorge Polanco. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
On the Twins.
Yep.
And that's Bubba Gump, Jed Dershmer, and I went after him, and it was just kind of like it wasn't going to happen, right? It was either like I had to wait like 2 weeks to get a response, or I think when I did, he's just like, dude, that guy's not available at all. And so I think that with a couple of managers, I'll just kind of like go, nah, it's not. I'm not going to go put myself through that and send an offer. But then, lo and behold, Tino, you get Polanco. You bide your time. You put an offer out there to Jed, and honestly, when I saw that, I think that Jed probably makes maybe like 4 trades a year, and you were the lucky recipient of one of those. So nice job on that.
And he's hit, I think, 5 home runs since he's been back from injury, something like that. I was surprised. I was actually surprised that Polanco was available. I think in some situations, obviously buying low can be a good thing, and Polanco's been hurt. But for me, I think some of the advantage at times and not to say that others don't dig in deep into stats, because I know they do. But I do think that someone like Polanco, who up to the point of his injury was not producing at the level that he had produced last year, you look at his advanced metrics and you see that he's doing pretty much the same thing that he did last year, and that he was just a little bit unlucky, right? His launch angle was a little higher, meaning he's going to hit the ball in the air a little bit more often. So his average is going to be a little bit lower. But there were some things with luck-wise within his profile that said to me, okay, so maybe he was a little hurt, right? It was a back thing, which was a little scary. But if they give him enough rest and he comes back, the talent is there for him to be like a sneaky top 5 second baseman and an incredibly valuable infielder. And I had been trying to patch together my middle infield with Tatis gone for the entire year, right? Brandon Crawford, Colton Wong, Andres Jimenez, Wilmer Flores, all kinds of scrubs. And at this point, for me, now acquiring Polanco allows me to play Polanco and Tatis, hopefully in the middle infield once Tatis comes back, which I love. And then the research that I did into Polanco coming into the year helped me realize that what he did last year wasn't a fluke. It was an approach change where he was hitting line drives previously, and now he's hitting the ball in the air, and that's what allowed him to hit for so much power. Nice. So I guess there's a part of me. So there are, in any league, there are managers who are going to respond to a trade offer an hour in, and there are some that they'll sit there, for days or weeks until you decide to pull the offer back. And it doesn't stop me from making the offer, but I do think that, because if the player is a player that I want, I'm just going to offer on that player. But what's interesting is what the communication looks like afterwards, right? Once you get a response, is for me very much tailored to the person I'm talking to. But it's not, how do I say this? But it's not as much about the personality as much as it is just the medium that we're using to be able to communicate. So someone like Balls Deep, right? I know his profile. I know he's a very good, close friend of mine. I know that he's gonna put a horrible offer, a horrible counter out there. And then we're gonna have to go back and forth a little bit, but that he's a really, really rational person. And knowing his life experience, I know that there's just emotion doesn't really play a role in the trade discussion, right? The only time there would be any emotion at all if it's a player that is playing in his current hometown that he would want to support or see. So he's a Mariners fan when he's in Seattle, so he would be partial to Mariners. When he was in LA, you see more Dodgers and more Angels on his team because he's close, because of proximity.
Sure.
But other than that, like he's just a real cut and dry, easy person to communicate with regards to trades. Whereas I made an offer, I won't say who or who the player was, but I made an offer on a closer because I need saves, right?
Yeah.
I made what I thought was the God offer for a closer a couple weeks ago. I offered a high first round pick, which was Luck Lasters 1, a 5 and a 6 for a closer, an elite closer, and I think it was an 11, a 14, and a 15. So 3 low picks for a first round, a 5th round, and a 6th round. And if I'm and it was a team that's not in contention for the playoffs, I should add, at all. Like should pack it in and just accumulate assets at this point.
Are you talking about me? You talking about me right now?
No, you're close.
Okay, it wasn't me.
You're on the borderline, but it was. I was stunned that the offer wasn't accepted. Like there was a part in my gut, I'm thinking to myself, this is an all-in move.
Yeah.
It makes me a little queasy to make this offer, but I really do need a closer. And, lo and behold, like the other manager was definitely, I know was kind of thinking about it, but it got to a point for me where I just said, you know what, this is too big of an offer. I'm going to pull it back. And that was probably almost a day later. And I'm glad that I did, because I made another trade with that pick instead. But the point being, if I apply my own rationale to that manager and try to anticipate what he was thinking, if I was in his position, I couldn't hit accept fast enough because I'm rebuilding. Yeah. I'm getting a high number 1 pick. I'm getting a 5 and a 6, which I think are really, really valuable picks. And I'm giving up a closer who could blow his arm out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
So wait, did they turn you down, or did they just sit on it? And you
they sat on it. But but we communicated some via text, right? Yeah. And so, whereas if I have a greater connection to that manager, like all of us and Matt as an example, the Strider trade with Matt was not me pursuing Strider aggressively. It was us just having a conversation about baseball via text. And then me saying, like, if I gave you a high 1 for Strider, what else could I get? And that's where the conversation went from there. It wasn't intentional on my part to pursue him, nor was it intentional on Matt's part to try to trade him to me. But it was born organically, which I think was really interesting.
Yeah.
My initial offer was the best offer that he had, in his opinion. So I just find it really interesting that we can have these, we tend to make more trades with our friends than we do with managers that we are not as close to, because we have more open communication.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you find it more or less difficult at this point to make trades within our league? And I ask that because, 1, we have more intel on opposing managers and what they're looking for. But 2, I think we're all smarter players than we were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And a greater amount of readily available information for us to consume to inform us in making those trades. What do you think about how we trade within this league, and if we are making more or less and bigger or smaller trades now than we ever have?
Yeah. No, good question. Really good question. I think that we probably volume wise, I would say that there's more trades going on. I remember at one point that this is maybe like 6, 7, 8 years ago, someone in a league of mine pointed out that I consistently, because there was a tracker in the Yahoo fantasy baseball, there was a tracker of how many trades, and they said that I consistently make over 10 trades a year. And I was like going like, yeah, that's right, 10 trades. And now I think, Matt probably and probably a few other people, you and other people, you guys have blown away 10, before the season even starts.
Right.
So I definitely think that there's more.
Right.
But you bring up the one criterion, which was bigger trades. I definitely think that the big trade is like dead in our league. I don't know why. Well, I actually have some opinions. I have some theories on why the big trades are dead, but definitely I would say that a lot more trades, but a lot more minor, small, little trades that go on in our league right now.
So why do you think we don't make the trades for the big players anymore? Why isn't, because here's why I ask. So I put Buxton on the trade block a week or two ago, and I got no bites other than an inquiry from, I got an inquiry from one manager who's a close friend, but I was surprised. I thought to myself, either people don't look at the trade block, or people just think, or people think I'm just fishing, right? Which to a certain extent I was, but I was serious about thinking about dealing him at that point to try to cover up some of the other deficiencies, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to trade some of my big players. I thought about trading Tatis for a while.
Oh. But yeah, I remember that. I put a Tatis offer out there.
But I think well, I'm interested to hear from you. What is your theory as to why we don't see, Trout being traded, or Tatis being traded, or Vlad being traded?
Yeah. I think that, my theory on that, and you're right. You're the exception. I mean, I remember you wanted to play around with Tatis at one point. Mm-hmm. And that was cool. You traded me, Andrew Vaughn, which I then turned around and traded again. But that was a big deal. You traded for Wheeler, right? That's kind of big top end starter. And God, these are all trades that you did with me. My God, maybe you're taking advantage.
Well, there's Wheeler, Rodon, Scherzer, and Robbie Ray were all pitchers that acquired over the last 7 months or 8 months or so.
Yeah, well, you'll see. I think that you'll see the high end starters be part of big trades in our league far more than hitters. I think that the reason why we don't see the big hitters move is because one, I think that there's a few managers in our league that look at their hitters, their high end hitters, and they say, never. This guy's going to be on my team until his arm falls off or something like that. So they're just unavailable, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, okay, I got the best shortstop in baseball. I'm not trading him. And so, sometimes I'll send out. I got Yordan Alvarez, right? Sure. He's really good, and sometimes I throw him around just because I feel that I have some depth at the outfield position. So I'll throw them around to try to see if I can just kind of switch kind of oranges for oranges on that and get like kind of just someone new that's an elite hitter. And so I'll throw them out there for other elite hitters, and people are like, they don't even look at the fact that it's Yordan Alvarez. They'll look at the fact that I'm asking for a particular player on their team that they have no intention of trading because, that's just the way it is now. They're just, they're just not going to move those big players. I think deep down psychologically, what that is that there's a lot of pain avoidance in these big trades, right? I mean, we're playing each other, Tino, this week, and I traded you Schwarber, and that dude is mad at me right now. He's just going crazy. I mean, thank God a lot of them are solo shots, but he's just going crazy. Like I look and the Phillies have 2 runs, and I go, oh, how'd they get those 2 runs? And I look and I go, 2 solo shots from Schwarber. Yeah. Each one of those hurts me. It hurts me. So. I think that, we're all human beings here. I don't want to say that, people are jerks for not trading their big time hitters, but it probably comes down to pain avoidance on that, where to this day, I traded Ken. I traded him Mookie Betts early on in his career when he still had second base eligibility. Yeah. And so for a while, for years and years, whenever I'd see Mookie Betts do something good, and he did something good all the time, it hurt every little time. And then, of course, I'd bring up to Ken, I'd say, hey, remember when I traded you Mookie Betts? And he would always say, yeah, for a middle reliever. Or no, he'd say for a holds guy. He loves, is
that what it was?
He loves the fact that he made that trade. So anyway, I think that we do know more. You're right. Everyone's more knowledgeable than we were before, when we had to wait for the Beckett Monthly to come out each month. But yeah, I think that a lot of it deep down is pain avoidance, and maybe that has to do with just kind of where we are right now with like the pandemic. That people wore masks and they stayed home in order not to die, and maybe they don't want to trade Vlad Guerrero Jr. because they don't want to have a little bit of pain for the next 10 years every time they see him hit a home run. Right. So
I think that I'd like to dig into, after the break, dig into that a little more if you have time, because I think it's a conversation I have with another manager quite often, that you can operate from a place of fear, or you can operate from a place of, I guess the other side, in my opinion, would be aggression, or not in a negative way, right? And with aggression without negative connotation, just trying to continuously improve your team and not be worried about who you're giving away, but thinking, 90% of your thought is about what my team will look like with that new player on my team, right? And I don't know, I was just looking at my own roster and I was thinking to myself, well, what players on my roster are untouchable and would cause me great pain to trade away and see succeed? And I think that the only two players that, well, obviously Julio is like beyond untouchable for me because he's a Mariner and because he's a young star. And I think the other one would be Acuna. But I think if I had the outfield depth to build behind Acuna, and I had huge holes at another position, I think I would think about dealing him. But everyone else, be it Buxton or Schwarber or even Tatis, I think in the right circumstance, I would think about it, right? And so I would put myself in, and this is neither good nor bad, I would put myself in the aggressive bucket as someone who, I'm not really worried about trading away, really any of my players. If they succeed, they succeed. I'm trading them because I think I'm improving my team and I don't want to look back. The point is to win a championship. It's not to have the most players that you held on to. But that's my own approach. If someone is more hesitant to trade someone, I completely understand. They might have a different stomach than I do, right? And it's probably bit me in the ass a million times. I miss Andrew Vaughn. I really miss him. He's a player that I really loved, and it was painful to trade him away. And every time he hits, an amazing 110 mile an hour line drive, I think that could have been my dude.
Yeah, me too, man. We're both feeling pain from when he succeeds. Who has him right now? Do you remember? He's been moving around.
Yeah, I think Matt has him now.
No, Matt got rid of him too.
Oh my God, I'll look it up during the break. Let's take a quick break and go. So as promised, I found this, which is actually I got it on, can't really see it. So this is a Charles Barkley basketball Beckett from October of 1990, and it costs $2.95. And it's got a picture of AC Green and Joe Dumars on the back. But funny, just to go through, and I actually was reading through it a little while back. The Jordan, I'm looking for the Jordan rookie card here. 250, listed at 250 in here. I know it's much more than 250 now, but it was fun to find that. That's an old relic at this point in time. And then the other update.
Yeah, so in 1990, it was 250.
Yeah, well, $250. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. All right.
Crazy. Cool. And then Andrew Vaughn is owned now by Ken, Chico's bail bonds.
Of course. Yeah. See, Ken, we're talking about trades. Ken, I feel is I like his style. I think I can read his style a little bit, not to be too presumptuous, but it's kind of like he targets specific players, right? I think for the short time that I had Vaughn, as soon as I got him, as soon as we made that trade, it was Vaughn for Wheeler, right? Yeah. There's probably some draft picks maybe in there, but as soon as I got him, he contacted me and he's like, "Dude, what do you want for Vaughn?" Nice. And and so I never traded him to Vaughn. I traded Vaughn to Matt for some guy that hurt his ankle recently. And that guy, and which, whatever. But anyway, when I saw, I bet Ken just went right after Matt. When Matt got him, he's just like, "Dude, what do you want for Vaughn?" And so
he paid a pretty penny for him. He gave up CJ Abrams to get him.
Yeah,
which is, I remember the conversation with Matt. When Matt was thinking about making that deal. And I know that I think everybody knows that Vaughn has the potential to be a top 5. Well, for me, so Aaron and I did dynasty ranks for each position on previous podcasts leading up to the season. And Andrew Vaughn for me is actually the number 2 dynasty first baseman for me overall. And,
who's number 1, by the way?
Vlad,
of course. Yeah. Okay.
So Vlad, Vaughn, and then I think I had Freeman, Olsen, and Torkelson, maybe kind of top 5. And then you had and then after that you get into Goldschmidt and Abreu and some of the older players that won't be around for that long. But it's interesting though for me, again, having Vaughn that high and being, seeing that other teams really value him as well. That's 4 different teams now that have owned Vaughn, and everyone has been pained to give them up. So he's just a fun bat, really, really, really good player.
Yeah. Although he looks a little funny though. I didn't quite know what his face looked like until recently, and I went, oh, okay, good. I could have traded him away. I think that
his eyes are a little close together for sure. For sure. No doubt. Funny.
You read the old baseball books like Moneyball and stuff, and they talk about how Billy Beane would rail against these old scouts that were like, he's got a good baseball face, right? And man, I do that too. I look at certain players and I go like, dude, I can't have him on my team. I can't have that face on my team.
So let me ask you this, and we haven't had a ton of communication over the years, so I'm just going to put it out there anyways. I think if you learn something more about a player, right? Sometimes it can be a really like motivational story. It can be something really uplifting. And sometimes you learn something about a player that you don't want to learn, right? Because it runs counter to your own belief system, or it runs counter to, it's just someone you might not be friends with based on that particular thought or belief. Does that impact who you have on your team? Do you allow it to impact who you have on your team?
Totally. No, I'm a human being, right? So that stuff totally comes into play. I had Josh Hader on my team, and during that time, right when the news came out that he was like, some jock bro guy that was posting stuff on Twitter. It came out for a little bit, then it went away. He was 17, no big deal, but still, for some reason, I couldn't get that look off his face every time I saw him. And probably I could have gotten over it, but at the time I'm just like, he's off my team. I gotta get rid of him. And Balls Deep was more than willing to take him on just because he's the top closer, still is, and that's the way he plays the game. So I got rid of him based on those tweets. And I had what's his name, Bauer. Oh my God. I had Bauer. I traded probably my best trade that I ever made, and the worst trade that I ever made at the same time. I traded, there was no draft picks involved, I don't think. I traded Freddie Freeman, and I traded, who was the other guy? Freeman, and I traded, another guy. Anyway, I got back Yelich. I got back Bauer. Oh, that's right, Scherzer, and I traded away Scherzer. I traded away Freddie Freeman. I got back from Loaded Bowlers from Kirk. I got Yelich, I got Bauer, and I got Hader. So 3 for 2. And
you got Hader and Bauer in the same trade.
Yeah, I did.
Hilarious.
But that's when Yelich just lost it and just went crazy, and won the MVP in the second half of the season, and basically got me a championship the first year of our league, solely based on Yelich's performance, if you look back on that, or at least from my opinion on that. And so eventually I traded Hader because I didn't like him, and then Bauer I just dropped, right, because I was following the news on everything that was going on with him, and it just depressed me. I was just like, he's on my team. I'm like, I'm looking for holes in the woman's testimony where she might be lying.
Right.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on his side.
Right.
You know, I tell you the truth. I don't want to be on, I just didn't want to have to follow that story anymore.
Right.
And so I just dropped him. And I think someone actually has him on their team right now. I think he's,
I think Freddie does. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, drop him, man. They just, you'll be lighter afterward. Right. You know, no one should have Bauer on their team. It's just gross. I think.
You're right. I just pulled the trade. It was in the 18 season.
Yep.
And it says that Loaded Bowlers trades away Christian Yelich, Trevor Bauer, and Josh Hader. Smurfatrons trades away Freddie Freeman, Max Scherzer, and Yusmeiro Petit. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the topper. That's what made Kirk just finally pull the trigger on that.
So I asked the question in part because, you know, I really like the Tampa Bay Rays as an organization. They've done some really cool stuff, you know, obviously on a string. And I love pitching, or I've come to love pitching. I think Aaron Hoyt has really opened my eyes to a lot of lenses through which to look at pitching. And the Rays are such an interesting organization to do that with. And so there was a point in time where I had JP Fireeisen and Brooks Raley as, you know, 2 of my 5 relievers. And when the news came out about, you know, Raley and Jason Adam and some of the other Rays relievers, kind of their reluctance to wear, you know, pride patches on their jerseys, I'm so competitive and I want to win. I am a win at all costs person in everything that I do. But there was a point in time where I just, you know, I couldn't have Raley on my team anymore because even though I really like his profile, I couldn't do it. It was a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
About rostering him. And it was, you know, I thought to myself, what would I do if it was Acuna, right? What would I do if it was a star? And I had to be honest with myself. I think I would look for the right trade.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that I would be admittedly probably more patient than I would be with a reliever. But I do find it interesting that, you know, I think there are different approaches. And it's funny that you bring up Balls trading for Hader because he's a very convicted guy, right? He has beliefs, but I think that there's a transactional, you know, kind of playing side. And then there's a personal side, and those two things they're compartmentalized in a way with him that I think it's on the extreme one end. And then you have other players who are on the other end. But to me, it's a fascinating topic because I don't know, like I love Mike Trout's statistics and I don't really know that I have anything against him as a person, but he's boring to me. Right? He's kind of a boring player. And so what it would cost to acquire Mike Trout and then follow each one of his games is not exciting. It's the way he plays is not, and his personality is not exciting enough for me,
right,
to give up the price that it would cost to get him. Whereas again, like Julio or Tatis or Acuna or Buxton, like I will hang on every at bat and every swing because I just love those players. Schwarber's another one. Even trading away Wilson Contreras in the trade for Jorge Polanco, I had Contreras and Melendez. And while I love them both, I can only play one at a time typically because the utility spot was taken up by a better hitter. And I just love watching Melendez. I think he's got his swag, his left-handed swing. He's a little bit younger. He's an inferior player to Contreras, but I wanted to be able to watch him. And that was a slightly emotional decision to keep Melendez and trade away Contreras. But there's a little bit of fear. If Melendez is great and he's on someone else's team, I think I would have been a little bit sad. So it's I don't know. There's so many different. I I guess, so one other one I'd like to bring up is Tamar Johnson, the high school hitter that's going to be drafted probably in the top 5 in this upcoming season. And he's a player that I drafted in our 5th round last year and I really love. You know, he's left-handed, he's 5'8", 190 pounds, he's kind of squat. And he's a shortstop now, but he's going to end up at second base. But he's got, some people have an 80 hit tool on him. They say he's the best high school hitter to come out in at least 10 years. And they called him the Black Wade Boggs. Some people called him that. But he's the kind of player that, with that kind of build and kind of only being able to play second base, I think that he's not the scouting darling, right? That we talked about. He's not doesn't have the baseball face and the 6'3", 200-pound build. But I do like that. I think we've arrived at this place in baseball where you've got Rowdy Tellez succeeding, right? You've got, as a guy in California, you see Reyes Maranta pitch for the Dodgers, and he looks more like a left tackle than he does a relief pitcher. But I think we're at a place now where we're looking at purely at the pitches or the swing, or we have enough metrics to measure that a guy can hit the ball 110 miles an hour, that we don't care what he looks like if he can hit the ball 110 miles an hour. And so in that sense, I think there's an element of diversity in baseball that is different than other sports at times that I really love.
Yeah.
You can have
I agree.
Different shapes and sizes.
Yeah. And it's funny, the problem that I have with the physicality of players is actually when I recognize a look, or I imagine that I recognize a look in a player. So it's usually probably guys that I went to high school with, where I kind of go like, oh, I don't want that guy on my team. Right. But when I see like a Rowdy Tellez, or I got Tristan McKenzie, right? Sure. He's got a non-traditional baseball look. Sure. And I just like that. Just like that does it for me. Like sure. I might say that McKenzie is like, maybe one of my guys that I'd be like most reluctant to trade.
Really?
Yeah. I love him. He's great. And I think that cool. Part of that kind of non-traditional thing where people go like, he's not going to succeed. He weighs 120 pounds. It's not going to happen for him. Right. And that just like makes me love him more, so it's, I think that the original like baseball scouts and from like, that they talked about in Moneyball, they were kind of like probably like a deal of kind of, they wanted familiarity on it, where familiarity for me just kind of drives me crazy a little bit. Where and I would say, not to get off the subject of the prospect, but Hader, I wish that I didn't make that move, because it was one where I think that I thought I saw something there, and my God, if I tweeted when I was 16, sure. I'd be right there too, probably, maybe. And but anyway, I regret that move. So I think that picking up Hader was the right decision, and that's another one that like when he succeeds, and I see lists of closers, and top closer is always Josh Hader. It's always like, damn it. But yeah. Anyway, the kind of the non-traditional baseball look, 5'8", Rowdy Tellez. I got Rowdy Tellez. I love him. Sure. He's my kid. My kid's 11, when he sees him, he loves him too. He goes, oh my God, did Rowdy hit a home run? Which, from time to time he does, which is lovely. And yeah, we love watching that guy, just because I think that he looks like some guy straight from the stands. Right.
100%.
Yeah.
It's the Hader thing, I think, is for me, it's a good lesson, because his tweets were very offensive, and he was young, but he was contrite. And I think that's the difference that we're talking about, right? If you think about, he's contrite, and he has been actually really active in the Milwaukee community in trying to do things, and that we see as positive. And I think he's aware of some of those previous misgivings and is trying to make amends for it. And so those players, someone who can admit a mistake and try to build positively upon it, I love, or I'm willing to embrace even more. And I think sometimes my knee-jerk reaction, right, to something like Brooks Raley in his comments. Yeah. I don't always give not just in fantasy baseball, but I think in general, give enough time for people to, myself included, to learn from those mistakes. So Hader is now, you know, a huge proponent of a lot of the things that he spoke out against as a kid.
Yep.
And so giving time and opportunity to see some of that growth or change is also really, really important, and could have allowed you to keep the #1 closer in baseball.
That's true. Yeah.
Right?
If looking back on it, wish I still had Hader, because yeah, absolutely couldn't agree with you more on that. That was a knee-jerk reaction, and if you look at the circumstances on that, it was something from the past that he was just like going, hey, I've addressed that. Trevor Bauer, bad human being. He was a bad human being before. He's a bad human being now. He shouldn't be on anyone's team. If I see him in a Dodger uniform again, I'm going to turn off the game. I don't think that's going to happen. If he's in another major league uniform, I would be surprised, just because I think that we can all agree that Trevor Bauer is just is a horrible human being and shouldn't be.
Well, and I think the lack of contrition is really is the thing. And it's not as if what he did is you can recover from, but I think that the fact that he continues to fight in the way that he's fighting makes it that much worse.
Yeah, all the details on that, not just kind of like, oh, he got suspended for sexual abuse of a woman, and just like, that's it, we're done. Yeah, it's all the little details on that, where he does not appear to be someone that grows and learns from his mistakes. Right. And dude, these are baseball players, right? They were jocks in high school, right? Sure. They were kind of, they lived a very privileged life their whole time. They're like really pretty women that have not to, okay, now I'm getting into Bauer territory here, but they've had things given to them throughout their life based on kind of an exterior that they inherently possess. Obviously they work really hard at what they do, but these people aren't necessarily going to be like the pillars of the community, and they've had kind of a very unique and as we said, privileged upbringing. But if they're willing to learn and evolve as human beings, then you got to identify with them and root for them in a certain way.
100%.
Yeah.
Are there any trades that we have on our list that you wanted to cover? Any specific trades?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. I looked at the trades and I found it interesting, just the people that were involved in the trades in our league. It's you're in a lot of the trades, Matt's in a lot of the trades. You bring other people in to those trades, and so I think that's I don't know, I just think that like on we're talking about people and human beings, and so it's just interesting that you guys are out there and active on that. I think that's what makes the league more fun, is people that pay attention and that people are actively working. This year, no excuse for my current standings in the league, but I was on vacation for 3 weeks, and the time change was one where the game started at 1 a.m. where I was. So all I could do was just look at all the scores when I woke up each morning. And that kind of screwed up my mojo. Like I like watching the games as they're happening. And so I was kind of disconnected from the league for a while. Sure. And that was no fun for me, because I wasn't like paying attention to baseball. I like paying attention to baseball. And I think it's more fun. Fantasy baseball is more fun when you pay attention to baseball. So you gotta love baseball. You gotta love fantasy baseball at the same time. And they work off each other. And so I just think that, the managers that are active in the league are they're just like they're worth their weight in gold for someone like me that wants to play in a competitive league, that you have other people that are there that are kind of like looking at things, playing the game, right? Trying to improve their teams. And so, when I see you guys in particular, you and Matt on that, putting these trades out there and getting some action happening, I just love it. I think that's great. So that's kind of how when I saw the list of trades, obviously I feel that there's a lot of, for me, I don't like players for draft picks. If we go back to the Beckett monthly analogy, I want a baseball card. I don't want to sell my cards for money.
Sure.
That's what the equivalent is. I want a Roger Clemens rookie in return for my Kirby Puckett. I don't want to sell it for $5.
Right.
So,
right.
That's just me. I like players for players on that. So we got a lot of,
let me say, unless you're trading the Roger Clemens for a box of new cards, right?
Hey,
so
go.
Some people see draft picks as the box of new cards. So I think that's just a value, to me, that's a value perspective. And you're in the, so I'm learning a little bit about you, and that you're kind of in the present. Your whole, your draft picks are important, but you're willing to deal them for players back. And then there are managers who will hoard picks. And I'll tell you, so as an example, because I feel comfortable talking about his team, I know like Balls Deep, right? He's the kind of player who has a really great team, but will not burn all of his picks to get his team over the top necessarily.
True.
And
true.
So that understanding how each manager values picks versus players can be really key in getting deals done, and who you're going to approach. I've moved much closer to where you are than I've ever been over time. I don't really know why, but I've gotten to that place where some picks are important, but I'd rather have picks in the middle rounds and not necessarily value those high picks in the same way that others do.
Yeah. I think that when you get high picks, sometimes it's almost like the other managers pick for you, right? Because they'll leave a Lance Lynn out there, and they'll kind of like almost like make it so you have to pick Lance Lynn with your first round draft pick, where if you got a first round,
right? It taunts you to, because that there's an evaluation on a player who's available, and you don't necessarily want to pick that player, but that that's the quote unquote right player to pick. So as an example, can I get this up here? I went through recently, I sent to Matt our draft results from this last year's draft, and I was freaking stunned by, so I'll read round, what it ends up being round 16, I think. I'm trying to pull it up now. Sorry, this is bad podcast.
Is that the first round you're talking about? Okay, gotcha.
Let's see. There are the keepers, and then I need the order. I'm not getting it here yet. I'll keep looking. Point being, the players that were picked in the first round in our draft were, Seiya Suzuki, who's been good, not great. I picked and traded to you Luis Urias.
Yep.
There's, who else do we have here? It looks like Zach Gallen, Jordan Montgomery, Lance Lynn, Luis Urias, Hunter Renfroe, Scott Barlow, Ian Happ, Josh Donaldson, CJ Crone. Some good players, right? But
Crone, yeah.
But I think players that more fill in gaps than are stars. And so it's interesting to see just how each manager values those first round picks, because when I look at that list, I think to myself, even if you get a productive player in that first round, it's still a crapshoot, right? You don't know whether they're actually going to be good or not.
Right.
And if I'm trading that pick for like a premium prospect or as a package for a player that's going to get me over the top, I'm going to do that every time.
Yeah.
But then you look at, you start looking at some of those middle rounds, and you see some of the players in the middle rounds, and they're just as good as those players in the first and second round, right? It's Ellie De La Cruz went in the 7th round, who's going to be a top probably 15 prospect soon. Jeremy Pena went round 7, right? Top 10 shortstop.
Missed him. Yeah.
you know, it's just Alex or Andres Jimenez went in the 9th round. He's a top 10 second baseman potentially going into next year. Max Meyer, I picked Max Meyer in the 10th round, you know, pitching prospect for the Marlins, and then traded him for a first.
Do you have the draft up right now?
I do.
When I got Clay Holmes late.
Yeah.
When did I pick him?
Let's see here. I'm just gonna go to.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. I'm gonna go to. It'll take me 2 seconds. You still have Tanner Houck out of curiosity?
I do. I still have him. Starting pitching eligibility. Absolutely open for a team that's looking to make the playoffs this year that needs saves. I don't know if that's you, but absolutely available.
Very much.
Anyway, with Clay Holmes, that you know, that was even though I traded him away, I still love the fact that that I picked him, and I think I picked him like super late. And that was if I picked him in the 1st round, I would have been like, well, yeah, you know, obviously, you know, you have to go for him if you have the pick. But like, yeah, I got a lot of pride out of the fact that that I picked up a sweet reliever like on the scrap heap at the end of the draft. So
round 13.
There you go. There you go. Still good picks at round 13.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So open forum, unless you have anything else with trades. Open forum is something that we do where we literally ask each other really anything you want to ask. It can be usually it's baseball related, but it can really be anything. Mm-hmm. So my open forum question to you is, do you have a dream baseball trip or fantasy baseball trip that you would want to take? And then kind of similarly, if we could do our draft as a league anywhere, where would you do it and what would it look like?
Oh, nice. Yeah, those are good questions, man. My friend, I visited my friend Keith one time when he was living in Boston, and he lived. You could from the roof of his apartment building, you could see the lights of Fenway. Mm-hmm. And we were there, and we just walked there in the morning, and the whole week that we were there, the Red Sox were on a road trip. We went and did the tour of Fenway, which was awesome. Loved it. But I never even saw a game there. I was just like, the tour itself was awesome. I did a tour of the Oakland Coliseum, and it was about as good as you'd think it is one time. But anyway, that I would go into I've never seen a game at Fenway. I've never seen a game at Wrigley. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that that would, instead of like doing the whole marathon thing where you go to like every ballpark in 1 year, I would love to just like hit those two, just those two specifically. Mm-hmm. And then maybe close with the 3rd oldest stadium in baseball, because I think it's Fenway and Wrigley are the 2 oldest, and then the 3rd. You know what the 3rd oldest baseball stadium is, or baseball park?
I can go through them and try to figure it out, but I don't know off the top of my head now.
It's Dodger Stadium.
Oh, it is.
Dodger Stadium's 3rd. Yeah. Cool. So that would be a sweet closer right there. I would go Fenway, Wrigley, Dodger Stadium, and call it good right there. Awesome. That would be the tops right there for my baseball tour. And my God, you know what would be awesome for a draft, if someone in the league won the lottery and wanted to sponsor this, that would be great to just get like everyone together, and we'd be like at a particular place for a couple of days where we get to like know each other and kind of like talk about things, and then have the draft after like 2 days of kind of like everyone like kind of talking about things and getting to know each other. And that would be great. I mean, what would it have to be would be maybe like a redraft. It's like the first draft that we had in our league was pretty much the most consequential. Now it's kind of like they're helpful and it's interesting to look at, but like that first one was kind of like we were all kind of getting to know each other. But that would be cool. I've never drafted in person. It's really? It's always been online. I think that would just be an amazing thing to do. I heard that some kid that was really into fantasy football had his birthday party and all of his friends were in there. They had their own fantasy football league, and for his birthday party each year is they have their fantasy football draft as his birthday party because of the timing of his birthday. I'm like, dude, that kid's set up for success in life, right there for sure.
That's awesome. I've put it out there a couple times, and this year I had stuff going on, but I think it'd be really fun for us to meet at spring training.
Oh yeah.
And to have the draft, probably Arizona, because most of us are West Coast, but to actually be in, get a big Airbnb and have, as many guys that as can make it as possible. And like you said, hang out for a couple of days, go watch some spring training games, have some beers, and then, kind of maybe the last night or second to last night, actually have the draft. And so to me, that would be like that's my dream, is to be able to do, to be able to all meet up in some sort of baseball venue and, or town that has baseball going on, and be able to have the draft there. I have been to both. So I lived in Chicago for a while, and I was lucky enough to go to Wrigley and go see White Sox games as well. And Wrigley is very, very cool. It's worth the trip. Chicago is my favorite American town. I think that from a food and beverage and kind of just cultural standpoint, there's no town like Chicago. I love Chicago, and Fenway is as magical as you think it is as well. There's just it's just the walls are screaming history, right? And you think about the players that have played there, and you think about all the different kind of baseball history that you've seen on TV that's happened in Boston, and it feels that way. There are seats that don't have a clear sight line to the field, right? And there's no way in hell that they would build a stadium like that anymore. But it's from a different time period. So yeah, I would say that those two are amazing. I personally, so I've been to a number of stadiums, but I've not been to Dodger Stadium. And I grew up with the Dodgers being a team that I would call my grandfather, my Filipino grandfather, to let him know that the Dodgers were on like Monday Night Baseball or Saturday Game of the Week, because that was his favorite team.
Nice.
And Pedro Guerrero was one of my favorite players growing up. Alejandro Pena was one of my favorite pitchers growing up. Ramon Martinez was, I absolutely loved Ramon. So it's a team that I've always really romanticized. And I actually went and saw a Dodgers spring training game in Arizona a couple of years ago. And it was Dodgers White Sox. And I went primarily to see Moncada. But the stadium there is built out a little bit. They're not trying to completely replicate it, but there's some elements that are supposed to be reminiscent of Dodger Stadium. And it's from afar, it's my favorite baseball stadium, hands down. And it's a trip that I definitely need to make to get out there. Yeah.
Maybe that's the move, right? I mean, I know that there was some Palm Springs thing with the league there,
yes,
but maybe
we talked about it.
Yeah. But maybe like a Dodger Stadium trip. I think Steve Soul Kitchen, he's going to the Dodger game tonight. He's down in San Clemente. He's taking his daughter to the Dodger Stadium. So Cubs, Dodgers night game.
That's awesome.
Man,
right?
Yeah, couldn't be better.
Do you have an open forum question for me?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said at the beginning, we've played now in fantasy baseball leagues. We were in a league before that, and we're in this league now. And so we've played together for quite a while. We've met right in Seattle. Yeah. So we've known each other for quite some time, but haven't really talked too much. So I don't really know your thinking on this. This is a pure fantasy baseball question.
Sure.
But what happened in the last league was that you kind of laid back for maybe the first year or maybe the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you went all in.
Yep.
And you won. Yep. And it was and it wasn't even close. I don't even think. It was like, oh my God. And where did this guy come from? And then I think, I don't know, I could be wrong. Then it was kind of like you went back and you said, okay, now I'm gonna hide in the weeds and do that again
Sure.
later. And now it looks like that this year, to be sure, you're doing that again. This is your this looks like your championship year right now. Is that I was just curious what your if is that a conscious thing that you do where you're kind of going, I'm not going to win it this year, I'm going to win it this year, or are you trying like at the same level each year and just some years it works out, some years it doesn't?
I think so. Great question. Yes, I think what I do is I try to win. I'm trying to win every year. However, I'm pretty quick to decide whether I think I have a shot. And I also think of our teams as, you know, you have 15 players who you're keeping, and you have 15 players who, if you're not going to make the playoffs, you should be trading for anything you can possibly get, because you lose those 15 players, or if you want to think of it as assets, you lose those 15 the minute the season's over, right? And so, or the minute we start to draft again.
Yep.
And so I've been maybe too quick at times to decide to fold for the next year. But if you have, you know, if you have major injuries, right, where we all have, but when I have major injuries, or I don't deem my team as being competitive, I'm pretty quick to try to rebuild for the next year. This year, I think I'm at a place where I have enough star power that I can withstand some of the injuries. And I think that I've identified my lack of pitching over previous years as a place where I had a bit of a blind spot. So this year, I made it a priority to acquire frontline starting pitching to couple with my young hitters. And I think that's been, so far, it's been beneficial. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back to conclude this pod.
Cool.
So they say that your best thinking happens in the bathroom. And
who says that?
Everybody.
How do they know that about me?
Right. So during the break, I realized I was thinking about your question. I love the question. And I realized that up until this year, what I would do is I would hold on to my best hitters. And my belief was that I was smart enough to be able to find pitching, and pitching was so volatile that I was smart enough to be able to find pitching and build through the draft with pitching. And so the year that I won, I kind of got lucky with pitching. But the other years, if I didn't acquire enough pitching to compete, I would just fold and for the next year. Which wasn't that's kind of a crapshoot, right? It's assuming that you're smarter than everybody else and that you can find pitching, which isn't true. And even if you do find it, you know, they could get hurt. And so what I did consciously coming into this year is I realized, or I tried to get ahead of the curve in that we knew that starting pitching is kind of becoming a dinosaur, or starting pitchers that go 6-7 innings. We don't see it as often anymore. And so my evaluation of pitching, I was starting to value those elite starters that would go deep into games much higher than maybe even the market valued them, because I just saw them becoming extinct, which motivated me to acquire in before the season started, as I stated, Carlos Rodon, Max Scherzer, Zach Wheeler, and Robbie Ray, right? And then I already owned Logan Gilbert and George Kirby. And so it was me trying to fix the mistakes that I had made in previous years. And so, you know, so far so good as far as building a pitching staff. But to answer your question, I think I want to compete every year. And I think that my approach heading into the season in terms of roster construction was flawed historically. And so that's what caused me to be kind of up and down. And I think with the construction of this podcast and the blog that I have, I've committed a lot more time and energy to learning about baseball and learning about statistics in a way that I didn't understand it previously. And I really do think that's aided both me and Aaron, to be honest with you, in terms of our ability to find players and manage our team effectively. So I credit Aaron and the investment of time in being able to build a different sort of team. But the reality is that I don't know that I was consciously trying to lay in the weeds for 3 years and then win, as much as it was I got lucky one year and the other years I didn't.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying that you got lucky, but it's just I just remember that last championship that you had. It was just like there was you and there was everyone else.
Right.
And I thought that I'm like, damn it, we're gonna have to do something about this guy if anyone wants to compete with him. And then, it turned out that, that people do catch up and things happen throughout the year. But I just remember that year that you won it, man. That was like, I can't remember any specifics, but I remember that it was devastating.
Right.
And not devastating in that I was pissed off that you won, but it was like, well, we're not even competing with this guy. It must not have even been fun, maybe, like, and this was like one of many leagues that he's in. He's like, oh, I'm with a bunch of amateurs on this one.
No.
This other league is where I face the true competition. But anyway, so I can appreciate that things happen, and that, I'm kind of thinking about that right now, of like, how quickly do you start rebuilding?
Right.
And because I don't know, it's been an unlucky. Don't give me. I can't even admit that I made mistakes. It's been an unlucky year for me so far, which is true, but it's also, mistakes have been made. But
it's interesting though. I think that where we're at standings wise. So real quickly, our league, so the top 6 of the 16 make the playoffs, right? Yep. And there's, as I think you alluded to, the gap between 6 and 7. You're in 7th. The gap between 6 and 7 is 10.5 games, right? Which is greater than the gap between 5th and 1st. And so there's 6 teams that have kind of pulled away from the pack in terms of making the playoffs. And so, yeah, I think for, getting back to trades, I will target every team from 7 down and start looking for some of those players that might not be keepers or might be on the keeper bubble, that they in theory should be dealing for assets, or 2 players that I might be able to acquire for one higher quality player, because they're thinking about how they keep their 15. I don't know that every manager thinks that way. I don't know if that's exactly the right way to think, but that's what I'll be targeting for sure. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, that I think that the reason the top 6 teams are where they're at right now, because I was kind of, I was looking at that and kind of wallowing in some self-pity there for a while.
Sure.
And what I found is that I've made the playoffs. This is the league's 5th year, right? And I've made the playoffs each year of the first 4 years. And I think the only other person that can say that is Kurt, Loaded Bowlers, that we both made the playoffs each year. And, it used to be the top 4 teams. So, my God, I'm getting too much into myself. But anyway, point being, I'm looking at the top 6 teams, and I know for a fact that Kirk, Loaded Bowlers, had the same pitching philosophy that I had, which is basically that the league in total undervalued starting pitching. And not only having the top line starting pitchers, but you also need depth, right? Because those pitchers go down, right? Even, Dodger pitcher management is that they'll put pitchers on the injured reserve list just to give them a break, right? And especially when they're already got the playoffs locked up, and all of a sudden your Dodger starting pitcher is on the injured list for 3 weeks to give them a rest. So you need someone else, you need that depth there. And I knew that I was kind of exploiting that for a while, and that enabled me to make the playoffs. Kirk, he knew that, too, I saw that he was doing that a couple of years ago. I don't know the guy's name, but Smoke on Smoke, he cracked the starting pitching code, and it's just been at the top ever since then. Aaron, I know I've been communicating with him via text message for quite a bit, and he knows about it. And I look at what you've done this year, and I go, damn it, those guys have been talking, because you know, you got. I remember when you were going after Wheeler with me, I'm like, yeah. Tino might have it too. Mm-hmm. And not to say that it's the be all end all of success in the league, but if you look at those top 6 teams and you look at the starting pitching that they have, not only do they have, you know, good quality starting pitching, but it's also, you know, they have a lot of it. You know, you want to have probably 2 reserve bats. Some people have 1 reserve bat, and then you want the rest of that roster space to be pitching. You know, and not too many relief pitchers on that. You know, if you have a relief pitcher that exceeds your relief pitcher limit, you want them to be a starting pitcher. You know, have that starting pitching eligibility. So you just want to like bulk up on that. I think that if you look at those top 6 teams, you're going to see a lot of pitching on that. And if you go back previous years, the teams that did make the playoffs, they had that same kind of roster configuration. It's just, you know, 1 or 2 reserve bats and then a whole lot of starting pitching.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Matt's team in his construction, because he's valuing hitting so much that he's going to have to build a pitching staff if he wants to compete in the next couple of years. So how does he use his prospect capital to acquire starting pitching? And does he do it before the keeper date? Because currently he has, say, 25 prospects, but he's got to be able to turn some of them into quality before he cuts 10 of them away. So it'll be super interesting, super interesting.
Yeah, well, the truism in baseball, right, is that there's no starting pitcher prospect,
no such thing as a starting pitching or pitching prospect. You got it. And Matt loves the youngsters on that. I you know, and if he wants, I'm pretty sure he gets it, that he's gonna that he can't love starting pitching prospects. Right.
He's gonna have to you know, have like these young bats and more seasoned starting pitchers if he's gonna want to break that top 6 next year.
Right.
But yeah, it should be interesting to see. I'm sure that he's got that all locked.
He's got a plan for sure.
That.
For sure.
Yeah.
You got anything else to add? Anything else you want to discuss?
Oh no, this was fun. I like the podcast. It was I felt that I was just kind of like talking fantasy baseball with you, as opposed to you know, a recording. It's long, so I don't you know, I felt better talking about the starting pitching secret at the end when maybe people have dropped off, because I swear to God, in my mind personally, that's just like, I'm like, damn it, these guys figured it out. They're gonna start winning. That's now funny. Where before, you know, I mean, Aaron, love his team, but if you look at his hitters, the OPS on his hitters are like lackluster. Just to be perfectly honest, it's his pitching that has him locked into first place on this league. So anyway, I just hope that not enough people, that if people start the podcast, they don't get to the end.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming on, man. This was awesome.
No, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hope to have you on again.
Absolutely. All right,
on, brother. You too, brother.